And at 10, Firebrand. A superpowered enforcer for Justin Hammer, Firebrand is a former activist who turned to violence after believing peaceful protest produced no results. Which sounds awfully familiar now thanks to the Flag Smasher's introduction, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. First appearing in Iron Man Volume 1 number 27 from 1970, Gary Gilbert was born in Detroit, Michigan. Gary wore a suit with an armored exoskeleton that gave him superhuman strength and resistance to fire. It also housed flamethrowers, which allowed him to shoot out, fire and thermal blasts from his hands, one mounted on each wrists, and flying jets that gave him the ability to fly, which I'm pretty sure sounds familiar at this point. Except with the Flag Smashers having already been introduced and no Iron Man remaining in the MCU as a counter, Firebrand making an appearance seems a little far-fetched. It's still entirely possible, perhaps this version gets inspired by the Flag Smashers and maybe Peter or someone has to end up dealing with them, but it would be on a much smaller scale since with all the movements, Marvel could be worried about upsetting people, and I don't think that they would handle, I don't know how they would handle this one. And at 9, Spymaster. First introduced in Iron Man number 33 in 1971, the original Spymaster was leader of the Espionage Elite, and they were a formidable opponent for Iron Man, and successfully infiltrated Stark Industries on more than one occasion. Man, it's like Star Labs, you just walk in the front door. He's also evaded Iron Man's grasp multiple times. After his operative Mark Sharon was killed by the Ghost while using the Spymaster identity, the original Spymaster just let the world believe that he was dead. Others have attempted to assume the role as Spymaster, but none really did all that well. Years later, he returned to action after being found by Norman Osborn, but quickly returned to the shadows. He owned a supervillain club, and when the Avengers left Earth in order to battle the Builders, he gathered a group of supervillains and then broke in Stark Tower to steal Iron Man's technology, because the tower was basically defenseless. And while this could be plausible, seeing how Iron Man is dead so his compound would remain partially unguarded, I don't think that the MCU is going to go this route, even if the character has been around for 50 years. It was actually 50 years this January, which is kinda nuts. And at 8, Blizzard. Dr. Gregor Shapanka, PhD, was an employee of Stark Industries. He was conducting private research into a means of achieving physical immortality when first introduced in Tales of Suspense number 45 in 1963. However, he attempted to rob a private vault of Anthony Stark, so he could obtain microtransistor designs that Shapanka had intended to sell to further finance his research, because, he was trying to be immortal, and that's what everyone does when they want to be immortal. However, he was caught and unsuccessful because, it was stupid. I guess he didn't have the Thieves Guild training like I do. I'd show the tattoo, but I have a full sleeve on and a suit, so I can't really, but still. Anyway, he was brought before Stark, who then fired him, understandably, because, he tried to steal from him. Subsequently, Shapanka also created a suit that could generate intense cold, which he had hoped to slow his own aging process. He then started using the suit and its abilities to commit crimes in order to, get more money to fund more research, because, everyone needs that villain. Doc Ock, Jack Frost. Well, the news media had called this new criminal Jack Frost, which is an insult to the man who played Jack Frost in the Santa Claus 3, who also played Mr. Honeywell on How I Met Your Mother. Anyway, he later changes his name from Jack Frost to Blizzard, and eventually the suit comes into the hands of Donnie Gill, who assumes the title in 1987 after Gregor's death in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 20 in 1986. And at 7, Crimson Dynamo. Technically, in a sense, Crimson Dynamo was already introduced into the MCU. However, his actual name of Anton Vanko was introduced to the MCU as the father of Whiplash, which I think just proves my point alone as to why Crimson Dynamo is too powerful for the MCU. First introduced in Tales of Suspense number 46 in 1963, the Crimson Dynamo's armor was equipped with an array of miniature electrical generators that allowed him to generate and manipulate electrical fields for a variety of effects, including but not limited to electrical blasts, electrical override, and a disruptor field that could be used to scramble electronic devices. Wonderful. The character was so strong that they had to make a new character named Ivan and make him Whiplash, who was introduced into the comics in Iron Man vs. Whiplash, but in the comics, he was also named Anton Vanko, with no relation to the Crimson Dynamo. It's confusing as hell. And at 6, Titanium Man. First introduced in Tales of Suspense number 69, nice. From 1965, not as nice, Boris Bolsky quickly rose through Soviet government ranks and became popular in the Communist Party. He had also briefly worked with Black Widow as an intelligence agent, but due to political reasons, he was assigned to Serbia. He learned that some of the camp members were scientists that had worked with Anton Vanko, who, as I mentioned last number, was the Crimson Dynamo. So Bolsky planned to make a new armor set capable of defeating Iron Man to prove the USSR's superiority over the US, because of course that's why. A titanium alloy armor was made, however, and it was much larger and heavier than Iron Man's, due to the camp lacking sufficient resources to design micro components. Because, Tony Stark built this in a cave! with a pile of scraps. Polsky was unable to defeat Iron Man on several occasions. However, I don't think this character would be introduced because they already made reference to him in the first Iron Man movie, where Stark made his suit a gold titanium alloy, which I thought was funny since people were calling him Iron Man, but in reality it was gold titanium alloy man. But like, you know, that line now makes more sense with this. Plus, Tony's dead, so I don't think they could want to beat Iron Man unless they go after like Pepper Potts or something. Halfway through into number 5, Fang Foom. Okay, let's be honest. Most of the supervillains that heroes fight are at least similar to them in some way. Most of Iron Man's villains have some form of robotic suits like his, but less efficient. Spider-Man's are mostly animal themed. However, when Iron Man went up against an actual fucking dragon, we all seemed a little bit confused. That's Fang Foom for you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, well, he's not an actual dragon, but for a while, the Mandarin, who was working with Finn, did actually believe that he was a dragon of myths and legend. The two together ended up conquering a third of China, and honestly, that's kinda nuts. However, it was revealed that Finn was actually an alien and that his fellow aliens were coming to conquer Earth, resulting in Mandarin having to team up with Iron Man and War Machine to stop it. I'm sure Mandarin regretted this decision after he found out that, you know, he's an alien. I don't think the MCU is going to introduce Finn, at least yet, but honestly, I don't know anymore with the whole multiverse and now there's more happening and like a dragon turns out to be an alien. It's par for the course at this point. But I think that Fang Foom is a little too much for the MCU. In at 4, Ultimo. Like I said last number, most supervillains at least base part of their persona off the hero, because we all know villains just want Senpai to notice them. MatPat, I'm still waiting on you. Getting MatPat to notice me will literally be my supervillain origin story. Anyway, Ultimo is no different. However, he didn't really do this to himself. Ultimo is a giant robot created by an alien race that the Mandarin had taken control of. The cool one, not the actor. First introduced in Tales of Suspense number 76 in 1966, Ultimo only died recently in 2020, Force Works number 3 in June of 2020. While Ultimo was under his control, however, Mandarin claimed that Ultimo was his own creation. The only thing though that Mandarin actually created, besides changing his programming, was an artificial blue skin for the robot. Yeah. Mandarin utilized Ultimo numerous times against Iron Man, including once in the nation's capital, Washington DC. During that battle, Iron Man trapped Ultimo beneath the Earth's crust, and as a result, the robot meandered through the planet's magma. And you know what that caused him to do? Not melt, but absorb more power. Years later, when Iron Man was in battle with like a rock creature who was called the Earth Mover for some reason in California, Ultimo re-emerged without his blue skin, significantly taller and much more powerful. He vaporized the Earth Mover in a second and destroyed a remote unit of Iron Man, and then went on just destroying everything he could. So safe to say it's probably a little too much for the MCU. Getting close to the end, into number 3, Count Nefaria. Count Luchino Nefaria was the descendant of a long line of Italian noblemen, and he inherited a vast fortune. If only. Introduced in Avengers number 13 in 1965, damn, these guys are old, Nefaria was fascinated with technological advances, and throughout his life commissioned scientists to create inventions that were far in advance of their current scientific standing. After allowing himself to be experimented on though, Nefaria was granted absurd levels of super strength, speed, and energy projection strong enough to make him a danger to any and all superhero teams. That's why Nefaria was introduced as a generic Marvel Universe villain in the Avengers instead of just an Iron Man rogue, and has had several run-ins with both the Avengers and the X-Men. And while we've had some powerful adversaries in the MCU, I think that at this point, the super strong, fast, and energy projecting Count Nefaria is going to be saved for another Avengers movie at least, or maybe even a new big bad if they get that far. But I think that it's probably going to be a little much. Penultimately, in at number 2, the Mandarin. Okay, so while the Mandarin might technically have been introduced in Iron Man 3, he was used as a MacGuffin. The Mandarin wasn't actually a villain. He was just an actor who was covering up the actions of Aldrich Killian and AIM, since Mandarin's iconic 10 rings hadn't been introduced yet, which is kind of proof enough as to how the Mandarin was too powerful. And then comes the latest MCU installment, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. You've got to be kidding me. I'm actually upset that they introduced these because it totally ruins the ability to correct the Mandarin. I mean, you can't introduce the correct Mandarin now, unless they end up using the name because they were inspired or something, but at this point it's been so long that it wouldn't really make any sense. The McLuhan power rings grant the Mandarin insane powers, like manipulation of atomic and molecular structures, beams of force, vortex generation, disintegration beams, creating areas of darkness, lighting fires from a distance, mental manipulation, electrical blasts, and intense cold and ice control. How is this not the next big MCU big bad? Because he's too powerful. They literally had to make it Kang, because they're like, oh, we're gonna introduce the 10 rings, but oh no. No. Finally, in at number 1, Temujin. Temujin is actually the son of the Mandarin, who ends up inheriting the 10 rings, which already makes him as powerful as his daddy. However, this in combination with his ability to focus chi to give him super strength makes him even more powerful than his father, even nearly killing Iron Man once and for all, which would have been absolutely insane. So it's safe to say that this guy has to be number 1, since he literally has the same powers as the real Mandarin and then some. Hopefully they don't make this guy into an actor or something ridiculous like that. That seems just sad.
Number 10, the actor. Now, I've heard of method actors, but this definitely takes the meaning to a whole other level. An ace infiltrator whose real identity is unknown that worked for the Russians back when they were an evil empire. Like Spider-Man's nemesis the Chameleon, the actor can perfectly impersonate anyone, and he was quite successful at stealing state secrets until he ran up against Tony Stark. The actor traveled to the United States and disguised as Stark easily entered Stark Industries, where he succeeded in not only obtaining some important blueprints, but also discovered that Tony Stark himself was Iron Man. The actor left feeling satisfied with his work and left cleanup duty to his agents. However, Tony was able to overcome them very easily and ended up traveling to the USSR to pose as the actor to foil their evil plans. And talk about a role reversal, am I right? When the real actor returned to his employer, the Red Barbarian, he was shot right as he came because he was deemed a traitor. This didn't actually kill him though, because he later resurfaced to work for the Red Barbarian to once again take down Tony Stark. Why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 42. Number 9, the Melter. Bruno Horgan was once an American industrialist specializing in weapons for the US military until a government inspection revealed he was using shoddy materials, and you can probably guess why that's not really good. Tony Stark scooped up his defense contracts because, you know, his weapons actually worked, and a bankrupt Horgan decided the only rational thing to do was to blame Tony for sabotaging his work and ruining his life. Luckily for him, and unlucky for literally everyone else, he found himself among his ruined company's assets a weapon prototype that generated a beam capable of melting iron on contact, and this began his evil reign as the Melter. Tony was able to defeat this villain pretty easily. However, he was still deemed enough of a threat to create a new suit made out of aluminum, and good thing he did, because in his second encounter with the Melter, that completely saved him. Skip ahead a little bit and we see the Melter return with a new version of his melting ray and team up with Whiplash and the Blizzard to take down Tony Stark under the orders of Justin Hammer. Tony was able to overcome all 3 of the villains alongside Cable, and Horgan was sent to Rikers Island, where he met a nuclear physicist that helped him further augment his equipment so that it would work against Iron Man's aluminum armor. Fast forward just a little bit more and we see the Melter reach the end of his journey at the hands of Scourge, who was posing as his assistant. Take a look at this character story for yourself, starting with 1963's Tales of Suspense number 47. Number 8, Gargantus. Before Iron Man found his groove fighting industrial spies and the occasional world conqueror, he was stuck duking it out with alien robots like Gargantus. Created by an unknown and unnamed alien race that had been scouting the Earth for the past 80,000 years, Gargantus was built in the image of a Neanderthal because that was the only species that the aliens had encountered. It first arrived in the town of Granville and used its hypnotizing eyes to conquer the townspeople, but the aliens' plans were quickly foiled by Iron Man, who was alerted by the invasion because one of the young women trapped by Gargantus didn't show up for their date, and nobody stands up Tony Stark, so he knew something was up. After a little back and forth with the robot, Tony figured out that Gargantus was actually a robot and decided to surround it with powerful magnets that tore it apart completely because, you know, magnets. After the aliens realize that maybe the Earth's defenses are too good, they decide to fly away, and we don't hear about them again until 1999's Captain America, Sentinel of Liberty Volume 1 number 5. Fun fact, Gargantus is technically the first villain Iron Man ever faced, so why not check it out in its first appearance all the way back in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 40, and let me know what you think of this caveman robot in the comments below. Number 7, Termite. I'm sure we all know the classic way that most people gain their powers in comics. You know, an accident happens and instead of dying, they gain abilities. Pretty standard, right? Well, I think Marvel was a little bit tired of that because Neil Donaldson was just born with his ability to disintegrate whatever he touches. After discovering his powers, he was hired by Obadiah Stane to eliminate the competition. However, James Rhodes, the acting Iron Man at the time, quickly got word of this and set out to take the Termite down. During his third fight with the villain, the first 2 ending with the Termite escaping, Rhodes was seemingly evenly matched with him until Tony Stark showed up with the mutant power neutralizer and shot the Termite with it, removing his powers completely, allowing him to be arrested and taken to jail. Word of this got back to Stane and he hired the Enforcer to take him out. However, the Enforcer was taken out first by the Scourge of the Underworld, so basically the Termite was saved completely by accident. The Termite was later seen sulking in jail, and that's really the last we've seen of him. Check out this villain for yourself in his first appearance all the way back in 1984's Iron Man number 189. Number 6, VIBRO. Alton VIBRO was your average seismologist until he fell into the San Andreas Fault while testing an experimental machine, and of course he ends up with super vibrating powers because this is the Marvel Universe, and like I said a little bit ago, if you have an accident in the Marvel Universe, then you're probably going to end up with some sick powers. These powers allowed Alton to generate high-level seismic vibrations and fire them from his hands, causing shockwaves, opening chasms, and generating earthquakes. Thinking his employer Frankenfortney was to blame for his accident, he sought revenge on him and thus began his villain career as VIBRO. After 2 battles with James Rhodes, the acting Iron Man at the time, VIBRO was eventually taken down with the help of Tony Stark in the Mark I Iron Man armor. VIBRO hasn't only been a problem for Iron Man though, and he has also gone up against the Falcon, Nomad, SHIELD, the Avengers West Coast, and even Wolverine. We later see him team up with the Mandarin alongside a bunch of other Avengers to once again try and take down the Armored Avenger. Making his first appearance all the way back in 1984's Iron Man number 186, why not give this villain story a read for yourself? Number 5, Doctor Strange. Now, I know what you're thinking, and no, I'm not talking about Stephen Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme and Master of the Mystic Arts. I'm talking about Carlos Strange, who made his first and last appearance all the way back in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 41. Carlos Strange was just your typical mad scientist, creating and concocting all manners of weaponry in his mountain hideout when a lightning bolt struck him, increasing the electrical energy inside his brain, making him smarter and even madder than before. 6 months after the whole lightning incident, Strange built an ultra-frequency transmitter from radio and television parts and used it to take mental control of Iron Man, forcing him to free him from his prison so he can enact his plan to take over the world and just give it to his daughter. Threatening to destroy the entire planet in 24 hours unless every nation surrenders to him, he launched a powerful bomb into the atmosphere to demonstrate just how serious he was. Iron Man quickly found his way to Strange's new hideout in the Atlantic and destroyed his main power source, effectively ruining his plan. With no other option, Strange withdrew and escaped custody, and we're honestly not too sure what he's cooking up now. Check out his story for yourself and let me know what you think of his character in the comments below. Number 4, the Chessmen. Like so many criminal masterminds out there, Obadiah Stane was a bit too obsessed with the whole chess as a metaphor for controlling lives thing. So much so that he hired assassins who literally dressed themselves as chess pieces, you know, like pawns, bishops, knights, and rooks, with him acting as their king. The knight got a flying robot horse, the rook used a castle full of death traps, and the bishop, well, now that I think about it, he didn't do a whole lot. He was really only able to manipulate his opponent's actions. One by one, the chessmen went up against Iron Man, with none of them actually succeeding in taking him down. However, that didn't seem to be Stane's plan. The string of encounters and events actually led to Tony's addiction to alcohol to worsen, and this allowed him to buy Stark Industries and push Tony out of the Iron Man mantle for a while. Tony eventually got his act together and went up against the chess-themed team once more and emerged victorious, with Stane taking his own life with a repulsor blast. Check out these villainous pawns for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1982's Iron Man number 163. Number 3, Mr. Doll. Now I know what you're thinking, and no, his first name wasn't Ken, that would just be way too good of a joke. Nathan Dawley was a pretty average dealer in curios and art objects until he came across an extraordinary doll during his time in Africa. He discovered that he could reshape this doll to resemble whomever he wanted, and that he could cause that person to feel immense pain by manipulating the doll's features. He decided the best way to use his new voodoo doll was to coerce rich business people into legally signing over control of their business to him, which worked pretty great for him until he decided to go after Tony Stark. Tony found it tough to fight against this villain because initially he was unable to withstand the pain caused by the doll. So in true Tony Stark fashion, he built a suit just for the occasion. Now able to withstand the power, Tony used a force beam to change the doll's likeness into that of Mr. Doll's, and the immense pain this caused Mr. Doll caused him to pass out, allowing for his capture and arrest. Fast forward a bit and we see Mr. Doll once again, however this time his consciousness is trapped and split between two mannequins, Jake and William, aka the Brothers Grimm. This didn't last for too long though, because he was eventually beaten by Spider-Woman and his consciousness dispersed for good. Take a look at the voodoo doll wielding Mr. Doll for yourself in his first appearance in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 48. Number 2, the Unicorn. Milos Masaryk was a Soviet intelligence agent assigned to security detail at the laboratory of an inventor who was developing advanced weaponry. One of the inventor's projects was a helmet that could discharge destructive energy blasts from something called the Power Horn, and Milos came into possession of this helmet after his inventor hightailed it to the US, thus starting his mission as the Unicorn of avenging the disgrace caused by the inventor's defection. His first encounter with Iron Man really isn't much to write home about since Tony let the villain walk away scot-free. However, several months later, after a not so healthy dose of brainwashing and augmentation, Milos returned to the US with the goal of doing whatever it takes to reverse an unfortunate side effect of his treatment. However, Iron Man was able to thwart his plans once again. The Unicorn teamed up with the Red Ghost, the Mandarin, and even Titanium Man, all of them promising to find a cure for him if he defeated Iron Man. However, obviously none of them were actually going to follow through with that. Flash forward a bit and we see the Unicorn once again make his way to the US to bring down Stark Tower alongside SPYMASTER and some other baddies. This was a bit of a weird time for Iron Man and the Unicorn because near the end of this arc, the two actually ended up teaming up to take down Captain Atlas. However, after they were done, they went back to being not so friendly with each other. Take a look at this magically named villain for yourself, starting with their first appearance all the way back in 1964's Tales of Suspense number 56. Number 1, the Blood Brothers. Like so many great Marvel heroes before him, there was a brief time when Iron Man was flying around having cosmic adventures with space aliens. When Thanos first appeared in the Iron Man comics, we were introduced to some of his henchmen as well, two of them being the Blood Brothers, Guri and Rahas Blood. The alien siblings acted as Thanos' guardians of his Earth base. However, they were easily defeated by the Thing and Iron Man, and this just disgusted Thanos to the core, so he sent them away for a while to an unknown location. Years later, they made it back to Earth to try and get revenge on Iron Man, but they were defeated once again and ended up locked in Rikers Island. Fast forward a little bit and we see Rahas die and Guri go on solo, eventually becoming a part of the Hood's criminal army. Guri later had his cosmic potential unleashed, and this gave him a crazy power-up, and he became one of these Slaughter Lords under the name Brother Blood. Now it's not really said when, but at some point Rahas came back to life and the Blood Brothers reunited once again and joined a new incarnation of the Lethal Legion, as a part of a contest that was assembled by the Grand Master. All of these fights around the world were thwarted by the Avengers though, including the Blood Brothers fight in Rome, and the Lethal Legion regrouped, escaped to nowhere, and decided to stay together as a team just to see what they could accomplish together. Check out this villainous brotherly bond for yourself, starting with 1973's Iron Man number 55, and try to name a better duo in the comments. Oh wait.
And at 10, PSYLOCKE. During the follow-up to the original Contest of Champions story, a seemingly peaceful group of aliens invited the heroes to battle each other and showcase their abilities, with the reward being new tech for all of Earth. In reality though, this was the plan all by the Brood to drain the powers of Earth's greatest champions and then pump them into Rogue, who at the time was carrying the Brood's queen's consciousness. In this competition though, Iron Man was put up against PSYLOCKE. Luckily, Iron Man had built some dampeners into his suit in an effort to limit psychic attacks. However, PSYLOCKE was still able to create the illusion that she was Lady Mandarin once more, and she got the upper hand on Tony for a hot minute before eating it and then getting destroyed by the gold titanium alloy man. And at 9, Falcon. Falcon is an excellent flyer, and in Captain America's third MCU title movie, he is shown as quite the pro pilot, dodging and being able to keep pace with both Iron Man and War Machine, even breaking away a few times, once with the aid of Hawkeye and Ant-Man. However, when the chips are down and we're on the ground, Iron Man certainly has the upper hand, as he demonstrated in the brief moments when Falcon dodged Vision's beam and caused it to hit Rhodey's arc reactor, causing him to plummet hundreds of feet and screw up his legs. And you know, since they're still the good guys, Falcon goes up to check on Rhodey and see if he's okay, but Tony blasts him and knocks him to the ground with one single blast. I have to be honest, it counts, but it's still funny as hell. I love that scene. And at 8, Brother VOODOO. Jericho returned to his native Port-au-Prince, Haiti after 12 years of education and practice in the United States. His brother Daniel though was dying from the spell of a rival Bokor who claimed he served the evil serpent god Damballa. After only a few weeks, Jericho had reached a proficiency in voodoo even greater than his brothers though. To further increase his power, Papa Jambo performed a rite that summoned Daniel Drum's spirit back from the dead and joined it with Jericho's own. And in the Axis storyline, Brother VOODOO used this power to possess Scarlet Witch, who Iron Man then had to fight off. Brother VOODOO, possessing Wanda along with a good Doctor Doom and Red Skull, worked to reverse the spell that caused Axis, but Iron Man escaped its effects by throwing up a last-minute telepathic shield, protecting himself from its reversal. I think that it's weird, like having a good version of Doctor Doom, though. I mean, Doom is literally in his name, but okay. Iron Man still technically won then, just saying. And at 7, Magneto. Yes, at the time of the battle of Iron Man and Magneto, Magneto was on the up and up, and as far as I'm aware, currently is. During Avengers vs. X-Men number 2 from 2012, the Avengers engaged the X-Men on their island home Utopia to get their hands on Hope and stop the coming threat of the Phoenix. This issue, among other interwoven ones, showed various Avengers facing off against mutants like Cyclops and Emma Frost, and Magneto and Iron Man going toe-to-toe. Which seems to be absolutely easy cheese given Magneto's control over metal, but Tony knew about this and had a suit composed of carbon fiber tubes, as well as studying magnetism in his free time, because why not? So in a moment of distraction, when Magneto realized what the Phoenix would actually bring power-wise, Tony managed to land a final blow and knock him from the sky. I mean, sure, Magneto had a moment of distraction that allowed Tony to win, but half of the fight is staying mentally in the fight. You fight with your skill and your mind, and Magneto dropped it. And at 6, Iron Man. In the Avengers crossover known as The Crossing, Iron Man beat himself. Yeah, that's not even the crazy part though. The big hook in this storyline is that many years ago, Kang came back in time and basically brainwashed Tony Stark in the early days of the Avengers. You might ask, what? And then you might ask again, seriously, bro, are you serious? And then another question of, if Tony Stark had been under Kang's control for all these years, why didn't Kang use Tony to help him any of the times that the Avengers actually had beaten Kang? And the answer to that is, of course, we have no f***ing idea. And then there was another bad idea that was thrown into the mix. The notion that Kang only turned to Tony after Hank Pym didn't actually fall for his mental tricks, which is why Hank has mental problems. Yeah, until one faithful team member had the genius idea to go back in time to get Tony Stark before Kang had brainwashed him, and then have that Tony fight against the older Tony. Tony actually ends up nearly killing his younger self, but hey, Iron Man won against Iron Man. Even if it was inevitable that an Iron Man would win, it's good enough for this list, damn it. Halfway through into number 5, Daredevil. In the aftermath of the Axis storyline I mentioned earlier, Tony remains swamped and starts using his tech for even more personal gain than before. Yeah, he's not evil exactly, but he's certainly not above getting all of San Francisco addicted to his new gene rewriting extremist app. Daredevil, who recently relocated to the city after being barred from practicing law in New York, doesn't like this for some reason, almost as if he has a conscience. But when he first confronts Tony in his new island mansion, the armored Avenger just tosses Matt Murdock into the ocean. Just flings him right out the window. They have another fight later on that is an actual fight, but Tony ends up winning yet again. 2 issues later though, Tony actually ends up saving Daredevil from falling off a building, but then traps him in armor and wipes his memory of all the bad things that he's discovered about Tony, so I don't think he did it for Matt's sake. And at 4, the Winter Soldier. Tony isn't able to get the upper hand on the Winter Soldier until he's sufficiently filled with rage of personal loss. And I mean, aren't we all? Rage is the fuel that makes the world go round. Which we actually see play out in the same movie as the fight with Falcon. After Tony learned that Bucky was actually the one responsible for his parents' car crash. I mean, I can see both sides of the coin here. Like, yeah, Bucky at the time was being controlled by Hydra, so it wasn't really him who did it, just his meat suit. But on the other hand, I wouldn't care. He killed my mommy. So yeah, I get why he went nuts. And I always find it funny that somehow Bucky always seems to end up losing his arm, at least his metal one, in some way or another. To be fair though, I don't think Tony would have blown off his arm if it wasn't metal. But like, imagine Bucky was faking having the whole metal arm thing the whole time. And it was just like a cool sleeve that he had that was hiding his real arm, and then Tony blew it off. It was like, ah! That'd be funny. I want to see that what if story. I know it would be absolutely horrific animation wise, but come on, please make it happen. Also, I'm pretty sure that they had the Disney Plus series for What If planned before Stan Lee's passing, and that they were going to reveal him as the Watcher, but couldn't, which is sad. I wish that had happened. Getting close to the end in number 3, Spider-Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man have fought almost as much as they've teamed up, with Civil War being one of the multiple times they did both. While Peter and Tony's connection during the 2005 run of New Avengers initially saw Spidey joining Team Iron Man in the conflict, which actually ended up resulting in Peter unmasking himself on live television, then coming to regret it and having some horrible future comic storylines. The wall crawler changes his tune once he learns about Tony's secret prison in the negative zone. The moral implications of which makes Peter switch sides, because you know he was imprisoning heroes who disagree with superhero registration in a different freaking yeah. Peter wins the first round despite Tony threatening to kill Aunt May and Mary Jane, but when the two meet at Yankee Stadium later on, Spider-Man gets absolutely pummeled. But don't worry, Spider-Man gives as good as he gets in other issues. Go watch the top 10 most powerful superheroes who lost to Spider-Man if you want more info on that. That's right, I'm telling you to go watch another video. But after this one, of course, you're only 2 numbers away. You only got 2 more to go. Stay. Penultimately, in at number 2, Hulk. Thanks to the versatility of Tony's suits and some help from Bruce Banner himself, Iron Man was able to take on the Hulk when Scarlet Witch sent him rampaging across South Africa in Avengers Age of Ultron, calling down Veronica, which I feel like should be a reference to the Archie comics, but I could be very wrong. The suit proved to be everything we could have hoped for as it went shot for shot with Hulk. The best scene from this fight though is when he grabs Hulk's hand and then like traps it and then just jackhammers the other fist into Hulk's face. Oh, I love that. However, this isn't the only time they fought. They also fought in Iron Man number 132 in 1980, when Hulk punched Tony into a semi-truck, tried ripping his suit open underwater while Iron Man was trying to drown him, which I feel like might have been a bit extreme there, Tony. And even ripped off a chunk of the St. Louis Arch to use as a projectile. In the end though, it took Tony loading an insane amount of energy into his armor to deliver the final blow, taking the big green meanie down. After that though, Hulk turned into Banner and then Tony's suit busted, literally falling to the ground around him. Finally, in at number 1, Sentry. Iron Man's fight with Sentry from Siege number 4 in 2010 is one of those he was being controlled by an evil thing tropes, where technically Sentry was the Void at the time, and the Void may technically be a separate entity of purely negative energy, but it often manifests inside Sentry's body and in essence has the same abilities, so it's like Tony beat Sentry. This isn't a list of heroes that Tony fought while they were on the good side, okay? It's a list of the most powerful heroes that Tony has beat, even if they weren't heroes at the time. It's good enough. During the events of Siege, Void served Norman Osborn as part of his Dark Avengers, raining destruction down on Earth and Asgard, which is definitely an issue for the world because, you know, Earth. While Thor may have been the one to deal the killing blow, though Tony was the one who had weakened Void into a state where he could be killed. So good on you, Tony. You took down basically a god and lived. Pretty impressive if you ask me. Especially because like didn't Sentry like tear Ares in half or something nuts like that? I remember talking about that. I feel like that was Sentry. I think Sentry tore the Marvel version of Ares in half. Or was that another person? I can't remember.